and welcome to Education USA's virtual week and roadshow. So we're so glad that you're all here with us to know more about liberal arts education. So I am Christine Grace from Education USA Philippines, and with me is my fellow advisor, Princess Wooden. Hi, Princess. Yes, so we're so glad that you're here with us today. So, for those of you who are calling from your home country or perhaps you're in another region, please take the time to type in the chat box where you're calling from. We'd love to see how international we are. All right. So, Princess, how are you doing? Did you catch the first session that we had today?
Yeah, I was able to catch a little bit of the part of the first session. So I saw our colleagues, our co-advisor presenting as well. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
saw.
I'm excited for this session actually.
Yeah, us too. So liberal arts education is definitely one of the sought after fields of study in the United States. So we're happy that we can introduce to you our speaker for today. So our speaker is Dr. Anna Weiss, the Associate Dean of Admission and Director of International Recruitment at Hamilton College in New York, where students hail from 49 countries and represent 7% of the student population. She has recently completed her doctorate at Northeastern University and is a frequent contributor to the field of international higher education, serving in various capacities for NAFSA and Study Maryland. So Dr. Weiss has presented at conferences in 6 different countries and has traveled to nearly 40 nations to assist international students in their pursuit of higher education. So thank you, Dr. Anna, for being with us today. We know that it's very late for you, but we appreciate your presence. So we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Christine. And I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen just to make sure everything is going well. Thank you, and happy International Education Week to all of my colleagues at Education USA and to everyone who is calling in. I'm so pleased to be here with you, so honored to be part of the first day of International Education Week for the EAP region. With that said, my name is Anna Wise. I am the Director of International Recruitment here at Hamilton College. And what I want to do today, I consider myself a fairly organized, planned person. So I always like to start with a little bit of an outline. What is our plan for today's session? So we're going to talk a little bit in general about some of the benefits of studying in a liberal arts college, and also some of the philosophy that we have for academic review and how you can kind of select it, how you can navigate the application process and some of the phrases that we oftentimes will use when you engage with admission officers in the United States. After that point, we're going to give a little bit of information about Hamilton specifically, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. So I know if you do have questions, you can feel free to submit them into the Q&A box, and my colleagues at Education USA will answer some of them, I'm sure. And if they're specifically for me, I will make sure that we answer them during our time as well. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started. We like to start with what is a college of liberal arts. As we know, there are several countries people are calling in today, hopefully from several countries around the world. And the idea of a liberal arts college is not a universal concept necessarily. So we want to start by talking about the liberal arts college as a model of higher education. Now, in the United States, we have, of course, over 4,000 colleges and universities. So many, oh my gosh, but over 4,000 colleges and universities. And these colleges and universities, they vary greatly in size and scope, in philosophies, but there are a few traditional models that we have. And the liberal arts college in the United States is one of the oldest models of education in the US. So basically, the liberal arts college focuses on small student experiences and independent learning opportunities that really celebrate the interdisciplinary nature of the world that we live in. I like to explain this a little bit by talking about the problems that we face on a global scale, and including the current pandemic that we're all experiencing through, really show how complicated the world is, and how if we can have a really strong understanding of multiple academic subject areas and how they intersect, it can really help us not only to live meaningful lives as globally engaged citizens, but also just to navigate everyday life. So, for instance, this current global pandemic where we're all waiting for the vaccine, in order to develop a vaccine, you need to have very strong understandings of biology, chemistry, different areas of STEM, but you also need to have a strong understanding of ethics in order to understand some of the pitfalls that can be avoided, and understanding of history in order to understand and then epidemiology, of course, and eventually we're going to have to get to economics as when a vaccine is available and is able to then be distributed around the world. And really, this just shows you that the problems that we face on a global scale today are informed by an intersection of different academic subject areas. So in liberal arts colleges, we believe that in order for you to understand and have and be able to navigate the world and some of the changes that are undergoing, it's important to take a step back and to understand some of the basic foundations of education and how do different academic subject areas work together. This also helps you to develop your critical thinking skills, which will then be helpful in whichever type of field you end up going into. Now, liberal arts colleges are generally fairly small institutions. When we say small, we mean somewhere between 800 and 4,000 students, so usually quite small. And they're oftentimes residential. Residential meaning that most, if not all, of students live on campus for the majority of their time in the institution. So our goal really is to give you very individualized experiences both in the academic classroom area and outside of the classroom, since so much of the skills that really serve us in day-to-day life end up being things like working in a community, problem solving, strong communication skills. These are all things that we believe are benefits when students live in residential campuses and are then able to interact inside the classroom and outside of the classroom. Now, throughout a liberal arts education, we do focus very much on individualized attention. So we like to say if we talk about our small classroom sizes. We talk about the small ratios. For instance, at Hamilton College, we have a 9-to-1 student faculty ratio. And this really means, again, that your education is personalized and individualized towards you and your academic goals. And these are kind of some of the hallmarks of a liberal arts college in general. Now, some of the benefits of liberal arts, of course, the opportunity to live and grow in a small, diverse community over 4 years. You might think live and grow, what students come as adults, correct? And of course, that is correct. Students come as adults. But it's important to note that a liberal arts education is truly a transformative experience. So the person you will be during your first year of studies will be challenged, will be pushed, will grow academically, socially, and community focused. And by the time you graduate, you will have all these new skills to be able to take with you either into postgraduate school, into employment market, back to your home. It's important to know that this is going to be a transformative experience. Now, throughout your education, as I said, we are going to focus very much on individualized attention and support and ensure that you have faculty members who are there to mentor you. Now, another one of the real benefits for liberal arts colleges are these really, really strong faculty advisors. So oftentimes when you go to some of the very large colleges and universities, you would have faculty members who are great researchers and they're very talented academics and scholars, but sometimes their focus is more on research rather than education, instruction, and teaching for undergraduate level. So at liberal arts colleges, the faculty members are best known for, research and scholarship, but also for mentorship, as their primary focus is oftentimes educating the undergraduate students that are in their charge. Now, as the world has been changing quite rapidly, of course, before the pandemic, and then even more so now with so much of our workforce going online, the liberal arts education has become known as the best education to produce adaptable problem-solving graduates. So as the world changes quite quickly around us, we find that what the world really needs is people who are able to understand core issues and challenges, are able to be part of the solution towards those issues and challenges, and are able to be very strong communicators. And these are all benefits of the liberal arts education. Now, finally, when you look at a liberal arts degree, oftentimes the degree base is a little bit more general than if you look at a large research institution. So for instance, you might major in biology as opposed to a specific type of biology. And this really allows you to individualize your education structure and make it your own. So if you're interested in biology, building in your individual research opportunities and really creating a specialized field on your own as opposed to following a preset, rigid curriculum. Now, with that said, when we consider students for liberal arts colleges, remember this important factor that we talked about with the community, with the idea being that you learn both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So in order to make sure that we have a community that will really support the growth and education of all of our students, liberal arts institutions tend to want to make sure that we have students present on campus who come from all across the world, all across the United States, different religious background, ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, and we're trying to create a very, very strong community. In fact, I would argue that for most selective liberal arts colleges, there are really two major factors when we make decisions about admissions students. The first factor, of course, is academics, and the second factor is the importance of this community. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more throughout the presentation, and how does an institution work on developing a community. So in order to select students from around the world, we use a philosophy that's called holistic review. When we say holistic review, we don't necessarily always explain what we're doing, but really what we mean is there are more students who would apply to our institutions each year who would be academically capable of doing the work. But we are really interested in making sure that not only are we bringing in students who are academically capable, but we're interested in bringing in students who would be contributors to our community that we have here, our living learning community. And we really want to get to know from students who are applying to our institution, what type of community member would they be if we were to bring them to our college. So we use holistic review, which really just means that everything that you send to us as part of your application process, we are going to use all of that as information before we make an admissions decision. Sometimes students would think admissions decisions really come from almost a mathematical formula. In certain countries, really, it just has to do with what type of examination result are you able to get when you leave secondary school, which helps to dictate which type of college or university would you attend. In the United States, when we, particularly at liberal arts colleges, we use the term holistic review. This means we're not only looking at examination results. We're not even only looking at your academic work. We're also looking at the idea of community fit. Community fit really means that we want to look at your essay, we want to look at your letters of recommendation, extracurricular activities, because remember, we're trying to think, if we brought you to our living learning community, what type of community member would you be? This also does mean that the admissions review, since it's not a mathematical formula, is done by actual human beings. I myself am one of the human beings that makes the decision for Hamilton College. And it allows us to take into account the very important aspects that we like to say are context. Context means that not every student who applies to our institution has the same lived experience. So we shouldn't pretend they all have the same lived experience. Instead, we want to make sure that students that we are taking into account context. Some students have academic work and then lots of extracurricular activities. Other students have academic work and then have responsibilities, family responsibilities. That means that they cannot have a whole list of extracurricular activities. Some students are very strongly impacted by this current global pandemic. Other students have been mostly spared by the pandemic. But basically, this really means that the challenges the students have to overcome are not necessarily the same. And the holistic review, which is a human approach to the overall application, means that we can take additional challenges that students may have faced or opportunities they may have had into account when we make admissions decisions, since it is not based on a mathematical formula. Now, this philosophy does allow us, of course, to enroll a diverse class, students from all around the world. At Hamilton College, we have students from 49 different countries and from 47 different states. We also are allowed, this also allows us to value what type of community member would a student be. So when we say personal contributions, we're trying to get to know what type of community member would they be. And so the good news is that oftentimes students will ask, what is the cutoff for admission to Hamilton College or to a specific institution? And the reality is we don't have a specific cutoff because we consider all of your application together within the individual context that you've been applying. So no cutoffs. Instead, we consider the overall application together before we make an admissions decision. Now, when liberal arts colleges talk to students, we oftentimes use the word fit. So we'd say things like find your fit. And I would imagine you'll hear this term fairly every once in a while when you're applying to colleges and universities. What we're talking about when we talk about fit is we're talking about the fact that there are over 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States, and there are hundreds of liberal arts colleges in the United States. So finding your fit means you, as a student, identifying a college or a university that you're very passionate about, and saying, yes, this is the type of place where I would be successful. And then also communicating with that institution and letting them know why you feel that you would be a great fit for them. Remember, we think about when the whole idea of community here at our institutions. We're really looking for students who are academically able to do the work and are also going to be active members of our current community. So we do want to hear from students as well once they've made a decision that says, I know I would be great at Hamilton College. Let us know why and what really is it about Hamilton College that speaks to you, that makes you excited? Because fit is a two-way street. So at the end of the day, it needs to be the student is happy and finds a college or university where they'll be excited and successful. And the college or university needs to be happy to have admitted the student and to know that that student will have access to all of their resources and be a valued part of their community. So if you're interested in finding fit, oftentimes then it becomes a question of how do you navigate the US liberal arts landscape. Now, oftentimes I know when we talk to students, it's very tempting to just rely on things like rankings. And there's, I'm sure, a very series of presentations that you can check out which show you why sometimes rankings are a little bit troubling. So for instance, Hamilton College is ranked number 9 in US liberal arts colleges, about amongst hundreds of institutions. But the actual ranking, it really tells you an external evaluator's perspective. It doesn't really tell you what your actual experience as a student would be at that institution. So instead of just relying on rankings, we want to talk a little bit about questions and things you consider when you're trying to think, would this specific liberal arts college, would this specific university be a great fit for me? So of course, one of the first things we want to think about is the academic programs that would interest you. If you're interested in biology, you should probably go to a college or university that has a biology program. But I always encourage students also to realize that coming to the US is going to be a transformative experience. So I would encourage you to consider all of the academic subject areas that they have, because you may actually find that you want to attend an institution that has more than one academic program that you're personally interested in, as your interests may shift over the 4 years that you come to the United States. Now, you of course want to then think about classroom sizes and student to faculty ratio. And this really becomes an individual conversation. Remember that liberal arts colleges specifically focus on the small classroom size, and in that small classroom size, they generally will have a seminar type style where students will discuss the content in a conversation that's mediated by a faculty member as opposed to just a lecture based. So when you're asking questions and trying to find the institution that's the right fit for you, think to yourself, does this small classroom environment, is this the right size for me? Am I the type of person who really does well and individualized attention? Or am I the type of person who really prefers to be part of a large classroom environment? Because that can really help you narrow down and decide whether a liberal arts college is the right fit for you. Now, of course, it's important also to think about the environment around you. Realize that 4 years is going to be a long time, and hopefully your US education is going to be a transformative and very positive experience for you. But the reality is that it's going to be challenging, and there's going to be times where you miss home, there's going to be times where things are hard. So I always encourage students to think about the actual environment you want to be in. Is this the type of environment that's going to set you up for emotional, physical, and academic health? So some of that is weather. So when I talk about climate, I'm talking about weather. So of course, here in the center of the state of New York, we are not strangers to snow. But I know in a lot of regions in the EAP, snow in winter is not such a factor. So it's something to consider when you're coming to the United States. How do you feel about winter weather? Is that something you want to experience, or is that something you want to avoid? The good thing about the United States is that there is so much diversity in regions that really you can find a place for you. It's also important to think about the campus culture. What type of information can you find online? How large is the international population? And is the type of campus community the type of community that you would genuinely want to be part of? Now, I also put the information about, do you have relatives nearby? Because a lot of people will have relatives in the United States. And maybe you decide, I really want to go study someplace that is close to my relatives in such and such location. Or maybe on the other side, you think, oh, I don't really want to be that close to my relatives. They live on the East Coast, so I'm going to go to the West Coast. Whatever works for you. If you have relatives or friends in the United States, sometimes that can be a factor to consider. And then also, it's important to think about things like retention, graduation, and employment rates. So why do I think those are important when we're considering fit? Um, Oftentimes students will say, what is the admission rate for an institution? And they will use that as some kind of indicator of quality. But admission rate for institutions really doesn't tell you that much about what happens after you get to the college or university environment. That just tells you how many students are admitted to the institution and can sometimes be misleading for reasons that I can discuss if you have questions later on. But the important thing to realize is really, once a student enrolls, what is the likelihood that that student is successful and completes their academic work? Because that can tell you about the likelihood that you would be successful and complete your academic work. So when we say, what is your retention rate? That really means how many students come back from first year to the second year. So you can understand that a higher retention rate means that students are happier at the college and are more likely to return. Second rate is a graduation rate, which is pretty obvious, right? How many students graduate from this college or university within 4 or 6 years? And then finally is employment rate. So once you graduate with your degree from that institution, how many students are employed or in postgraduate studies after they finish their studies? Now, alongside, it can also be helpful to understand what type of extra experiential learning can you have that can really help supplement your resume. So thinking about internships or research experiences, these can really help you understand how your academic fit experience would be at that college or university. Now, when we talk about engagement, it's also important. This is part of the fact that fit is a two-way street, right? So it's important for you to find a college or university that you feel confident you would have a great experience and you would be a great contributor to their community. But it's also important for you to engage with the college or university to let them know, why do you think you would be such a great student, such a great member of that community? So I want to talk just for a moment about engagement with colleges and universities. So there's some easy ways to begin this engagement conversation. For instance, through signing up for databases and academic information. And after this presentation, if you are interested in Hamilton, I will share a link so you could sign up for some more information about Hamilton. But it's also important to have valuable engagements when appropriate with admission officers. So this means at liberal arts colleges and at selective liberal arts colleges, such as Hamilton particularly, we have more students each year than we have spaces. So oftentimes we want to know from students what is it about our college or institution that motivates them to apply, and how engaged are they in this specific college or university. That's where we use terms like demonstrated interest. But really, this is a fancy way of saying we know that fit is a two-way street. And we want to know from you if you've already decided, yes, Hamilton, or yes, this specific college would be a great academic or community fit for you. We want to learn from you. Why do you think that that is? What type of aspects do you have that would really be a great fit at our college or university individually? Now, it is important to realize that we're going to have lots of opportunities for you to engage with us virtually, even if you're not able to visit. Now, of course, in best of circumstances, it's challenging to come to the United States to visit a college. But usually, we would have admission officers who would come out to multiple areas in EAP, particularly to share information about our institutions. And this year, we're not able to do that in the same way. So we have multiple opportunities for you to engage with us virtually online. And I can share a link for information for Hamilton later on. But we have many opportunities for you to engage with us in meaningful ways. And I do also want to just put the note out there when I talk about engagement. This does not mean emailing every week and just saying, how are you doing, admission officer? Instead, it means showing you've gone through the website, you've done your research about an institution, and following up with specific questions that you may not be able to find addressed on the website. Or maybe you want to interact with a professor or a student, or maybe you want to supplement your application with an art portfolio you have. These types of things are really great opportunities for engagement. So realize that when you're doing this, you should make sure it's a meaningful interaction with an admission officer, and that we have multiple opportunities for you to do so, particularly through our virtual visit locations. Now, finally, I want to take a moment to talk about COVID-19 responses at liberal arts colleges, because I know that this is something that is an important factor, particularly for students as you are considering where you want to apply for this year. Safety is an important factor, and as we all know, different countries around the world have had different responses to COVID-19. However, within the United States, liberal arts colleges are some of the best positioned institutions in order to respond to COVID-19. And the reasons for that have to do with some of the things we've been talking about. They focus on being small classroom in small campus environments with largely residential campus locations, and oftentimes many, many resources to help support their students throughout the current crisis. So this means that it's easier to protect a community than it is to protect locations where students are coming in and out from all across the region. And it's also easier to make sure that the focus on communities are honored at liberal arts colleges. And really that means for us in this circumstance, the health of communities, since that liberal arts education really focuses on this community aspect as well. So I want to talk, I know a lot of students want to know what would the situation be at their specific liberal arts college this upcoming year. But I want to focus, and I can't really answer for you fully what would your experience be like the semester you start. But the best indicator for the future is really to look at the past. So I want to talk about some of the things that liberal arts colleges did this past year in order to keep our students and community safe. So the first is all of our campuses did close back in March. But at Hamilton specifically, when we made the decision that we had to go remotely for the first time in our over 200 years, the first thing we did was we set up triage locations across campus where each student was checked in with a faculty or staff member to make sure that they had a safe place to return home to. If they had a safe place to return home to, we booked airline tickets for students, including to places like Thailand, including to Korea, including to Indonesia, Philippines. Booked tickets for students to make sure that they were able to get home if they wanted to. If they were not able to go home, we kept them free of charge in our residence halls over the summer as well, to make sure that students had a safe location to be. Now, if students were remote and they needed support for technology in order to study online, which was the option for the spring, we actually shipped, I personally had to figure out how to ship a laptop to Nepal for one of our students when his laptop broke in order to make sure he was able to continue studying. So we sent him a new laptop. I also purchased Wi-Fi connections for students, and just to make sure that students were able to be healthy. Yes, first priority, students are able to be healthy and are able to go home if they wanted to. Second priority is that students are able to continue with their academic work. Now this fall, most liberal arts colleges have some form of in-person instruction, and they're doing a lot of things in order to make sure communities are safe. For instance, at Hamilton, we have 90% of our traditional population are actually on campus right now, which means about 10% of our students are studying remotely. We did a lot of things in order to make sure students were safe this term in order to be able to offer this in-person education that we are so well known for. And one of the highlights of that is that at Hamilton and at many selective liberal arts colleges, we are frequently testing our students. So at Hamilton, we actually test all of our students twice per week for COVID-19, and our faculty and staff members are tested once or twice per week. And this really allows us to make sure that we are identifying any instances of virus and able to isolate them, quarantine them, and do contact tracing, all of those types of things. We, of course, also have masks and all of that. And we have actually shifted our academic calendar, and most liberal arts colleges have done so, shifted our academic calendar, which means that students will actually be heading home over our fall break, which is in about a week or so from now. Students will be heading home for their fall break, and they'll be taking their examinations remotely at that time in order to ensure that we do not have students traveling off campus and then returning back to campus and potentially spreading the virus. Now, with that said, liberal arts colleges also, with this whole idea of holistic review, which is able to be adjusted based on context, um, we are um, we are able to make policies that will make it more friendly for students from around the world. So, for instance, not over 90%, that's 90% of colleges and universities in the United States, and particularly liberal arts colleges, are now SAT, ACT optional for application review. This means if you do not have an SAT or an ACT test, you can apply to these colleges and usually not be penalized. At Hamilton, if you apply without testing, you would not be penalized throughout the application process, as our assumption would be the testing has not been available in your home country or in your home region, and we would review your application without that element. Since our application review is not a mathematical formula, we are able to work either with testing or without testing. And that's one of the things that liberal arts colleges specifically can do. Now, in addition to that, at Hamilton, I'm going to talk about our financial aid in a moment. We meet 100% of the demonstrated financial need for every admitted student. This means that if you're admitted to Hamilton, we'll give you all of the financial funding that you need in order to ensure a Hamilton education is affordable for you and your family. And we are not decreasing this promise. Instead, we are increasing our financial aid budget this year. As we know, it is both a public health crisis and an economic crisis. Now, with that said, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Hamilton specifically, and then we're going to have some time for questions. But I wanted to thank you again for coming today. So we like to start at Hamilton with just a few facts, information about us. We are one of the oldest colleges in the United States, in the state of New York specifically as well. In the state of New York, there's over 500 colleges and universities today. We are the third oldest. And we have just under 2,000 students. So when we talk about the small individualized classroom, that's very much the situation at Hamilton College, as we have a 9-to-1 student faculty ratio, and our institution is fully undergraduate, fully bachelor's level. And this does mean that we are able to use all of our resources in order to ensure that students are supported in their undergraduate studies, as opposed to having to distribute from undergraduate and master's level studies. Now, our location, we're located in the center of the state of New York. Now, if you're not terribly familiar with New York geography, that's fair, but the state of New York is actually quite a large region, and Hamilton is in the very center of the state, and that makes it actually a full 4-hour drive from New York City, from Boston, Toronto, and Montreal. Who knew the state of New York was so large? We're on the edge of the Adirondack Mountain Range, which is the largest state park in the United States. So think mountains, rivers, trees, and valleys, and that would really tell you about Hamilton's location. Now, when we talk about liberal arts colleges individually, the first question students usually ask is, what makes Hamilton different than a traditional liberal arts college? Remember, traditional liberal arts colleges really focus on interdisciplinary nature of academic subjects, right? At Hamilton, we do that and then some. We have an open curriculum, or as we say, study what you love. This means we have no general education requirements. We have no core education requirements. Instead, every student has access to all 57 different academic subject areas at Hamilton, and you create an individualized academic plan that suits your specific needs. The most popular majors at Hamilton, economics is number 1, mathematics is number 2. In fact, we graduate higher percentages of math majors than University of Chicago, MIT, and Caltech. So that's kind of fun. And third most popular is world politics. However, I've highlighted here the interdisciplinary option, as that is an opportunity for you to create your own major. In fact, we have, it's a popular option for international students, as I have 2 international students in my office right now. One is from EducationUSA Hungary, and another was from China. The Chinese student created a major in data science. The Hungarian student created a major in architecture. So creating specific academic subject areas, absolutely. I'm going to speed up a little bit because I think I'm running a little over on time, but I want to highlight also some of the opportunities for research and internship opportunities. So at Hamilton, students have the opportunity to do individual research starting your first summer on campus. In fact, over 10% of our students do research each summer. And we have internship opportunities in Boston, New York City, and Washington, D.C. These are internship programs that focus on having you live in one of these big cities for a semester. You would then have a full-time internship during the day, and then you would take classes in the evening with a Hamilton professor. So this allows you to be a full-time student, have a full-time internship, and live in one of the big US cities during your time at Hamilton. Second promise we make to students is, of course, about our community, but we've been talking about the importance of community throughout which. So I'm going to speed a little bit through this section and come a little bit to outcomes, because we want to make sure that there are opportunities for outcomes after you graduate. Now, Hamilton's alumni network is in the top 1% in the US for engagement with the college, which means they do a lot to support our current students as they get ready to go into the workforce. And we do have an international alumni mentorship program, which pairs international students with recent international alums for mentorship, internship, and job placement opportunities. But you can see we have a 97% job placement rate after graduation. 97% of our students have at least one internship, and 81% have at least two. I wanted to highlight a few of our EAP students specifically. So these are just some of the students that are studying at Hamilton right now. And we wanted to share some of this information also. I know Panita, specifically on the left from Thailand, worked with Education USA Thailand before coming to Hamilton. So she was exactly in this position as students on today's call. And I know both Rex and Jean had several people who were able to serve as mentors to them throughout the process. So I wanted to highlight a little bit about their stories and their involvement. Now, with that said, I promised to talk a little bit about the financial aid promise at Hamilton College. And our promise is that we meet 100% of the demonstrated financial need for every admitted student, which includes international students. So this means we don't offer merit scholarships. Instead, we offer only need-based scholarships. So if you're admitted to Hamilton College, we are committed to offering you a financial aid package that will make it affordable for you and your family. So if you only have access to $2,000 per year to support your education in the United States and Hamilton admits you, we would offer you a financial aid package that will cover the remainder of your expenses, including airfare, including medical insurance, books, all of those types of things. And we do this in order to focus on access and opportunity to students from around the world. We don't want anyone to be prevented from studying here due to financial reasons. Now, with that said, our selection process is here, and then we're going to have time for questions, and Princess is going to help us navigate the Q&A. So, of course, we're considering the two factors, academics and community. We have here listed our deadlines as well. And we are going to be test optional, meaning the SAT or ACT is not required. We do require a test of English proficiency, but we will accept multiple online versions, including the online TOEFL, the online IELTS, and the Duolingo English test to prove proficiency. I have deadlines here, but I wanted to say very much again, thank you very much to Education USA. Thank you to everyone for calling in. And I will stop sharing my screen and see if questions have come in that Princess was able to help us with. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna, for your presentation. I think you were able to cover everything. The student might have question, but yeah, it's an addition question, I guess. So I just want to highlight one of the things that you mentioned regarding the fit, that it's a two-way. It's not only the students looking that they are best fit to that university, but they have to look also what they can contribute to the university as well. So let me go to the first question that we have. I think as an advisor also, we keep on hearing and receiving this question regarding liberal arts college. What if I am pursuing a STEM, or that's my, in my senior high school, that's my, they have specialization in high school and they're specializing in STEM. Are they still best fit to continue their studies in a liberal arts college?
So I would say it can be a great opportunity to study STEM at a liberal arts college. Realize that in the United States, we don't have any type of stream type program or any focus on this specific degree that doesn't allow for any academic exploration. The US education type is such that we really want to encourage you to try more than one academic subject area. So if you've had history in a STEM program, you can absolutely expand and do STEM along with humanities, along with art, is something we encourage. But also you can find a really strong STEM mentorship and research opportunities. So if you're really passionate about a specific area in STEM, if you can have the opportunity to do independent student research as part of your undergraduate bachelor's experience, this can really, really help you to grow in that academic field and to get that job or get that postgraduate education, because you'd have practical experience before you've been graduated. So the first thing I would say is just because you've been STEM before, don't feel that you have to stay STEM. because the US will allow you to change. But the second thing I would say is if you are passionate about STEM, you may find that liberal arts colleges offer you the best opportunity for undergraduate independent research, which can be really helpful for developing in your field.
Thank you for that answer. Yes, because we have a lot of science high schools here in the Philippines, and most of their question is, I'm in a science high school, but I pursue in a liberal arts. And I think Christine has one great example as as her advisee. Would you like to share that, Christine?
Yes, so we definitely had some students in the past who were not quite sure about the right fit and ended up getting offers from bigger universities. And you would think that, students oftentimes depend on what they see on the media, that as if those are all the options. But the student, upon learning more about a liberal arts college where she was also admitted, realized that, wait a second, I want that interaction with the faculty. I want to be in a university that's fairly small in class size but has access to interdisciplinary learning, which is really valuable later on in life in pursuing careers. So, with that, let me transition into one of the questions that we received from our US Embassy Facebook page in the Philippines. So, this is from Andy. Hi, Andy. Thanks for tuning in. So, Adrian, who is also called Andy, he says that he wanted to study in the United States, but he's afraid because he cannot really finance his studies. So, could he work and study on campus? And I know you talked a little bit about your financial aid at Hamilton College. So, what kind of requirements would he need to submit?
Thank you for that question. The first thing is in the United States, of course, you'd be applying for a student visa. And the student visa has very specific regulations, which does mean that traditionally you are able to work for up to 20 hours per week on campus only. That's the restriction for the student visa, which means that oftentimes this on campus job should not be used as a primary source of funding for your education in the United States. Now, with that said, there are different types of scholarship models that you may find from colleges or universities, usually two major types. The first is called merit, which might be based on your academic work. And the second is a need-based financial aid, which is really based on your family's financial circumstances. Now, at Hamilton, we only do the need-based financial aid. We don't offer any merit scholarships. So you can go to the website, though, for my institution and for any institution that you're applying, and you can find what types of scholarships are offered, whether it's merit, whether it's need-based, and what is required as part of your application. So for need-based scholarships, usually you need to fill out a form that's called a CSS profile, which talks about your family's financial circumstances. And really what we're trying to understand from the financial documentation is if you were to be admitted at our institution, how much scholarships would be necessary in order to ensure it's affordable for you and your family. So the good thing is that we're going to publish all of this information quite loudly on our website. So if you go to the website, you can see what type of forms are required, and you can submit that way. And just because you don't have the access to full funding, if you're admitted to an institution such as mine, again, we are going to ensure that you have the financial resources from our college in order to ensure it's affordable for you and your family. So that can be a question that you can ask as part of the application process. Do you meet 100% of the financial need for students? What's the average scholarship like? And at Hamilton, we do 100% of financial need.
Thank you for that. I know that's usually the question about financial aid. And it's a good thing that Hamilton College has a financial aid that students, international students can apply. We have questions in our chat box, which I think we will not be able to answer them all, but for our viewers, we will make sure to answer them using the chat box as well. And then we'll stay connected with you. And then Anna already put his information in the chat box. We'll also share that to you so that you can contact her if you have further information or further questions about Hamilton College. So we were very happy that there are a lot of participants this evening for this session. And we encourage you to stay tuned because we will be having a lot of events The next one would be STEM, and then we'll have a graduate schools, professional schools, and about community colleges. So as we celebrate International Education, we invite everyone to stay tuned. This is the first day of International Education Week, and we would like you to be with us, and so that you learn more about U.S. university and study opportunity in United States. So just to wrap up for this session, I'll turn over to Christine.
Yes, okay. So I think we have a few minutes left. Maybe real quick, Anna, we have this really good question from one of our participants. How does the process of creating a major, such as the one you mentioned about architecture, a student has been able to create that, how does that work?
All of this really only works through careful academic advising. And I think I rushed a little, I missed some of this talking about the academic advising. So basically what you would do is you would work with an individual academic advisor who helps you to make good academic decisions and to navigate all of the courses. And you say, I'm interested in studying such and such subject. It doesn't perfectly fit into one of the academic major areas. But if I combine a classroom here and a classroom here and maybe a study abroad semester, I can create a new subject area, such as data science or architecture for those two students. So at Hamilton, this would take place in your second year of studies. And you would work with an academic advisor who would help you to create a curriculum. And then this would be proposed to our faculty members here, and it would be approved. Our international student who completed the process said it took about 10 months from when he put in the proposal and when the actual academic program was approved. But all of this was done with careful mentorship from faculty members. So we don't expect you to know how to navigate it on your own. A mentorship will be involved.
Okay, awesome. So that really paints a clear picture. So I think we have less than a minute left. Maybe we can squeeze in another question. Does a low or average GPA and SAT score from an international student mean a lower chance of admission?
So we are, of course, usually selective institutions. So we do admit students with all different types of academic backgrounds, but they will usually have compelling aspects to their application and if they're overcoming some academic challenges. And usually stronger academic results is going to mean stronger admission results because that is one of the important factors. But I do want to make sure you know that we do not have a specific cutoff. Instead, we consider multiple factors as part of the application process.
Yes, because it's all about the holistic admissions process, which is amazing because this just goes to show how US universities care about the story of the student, not just their GPA. So thank you again, Anna, for taking the time to join us today. This means a lot, and you have just made our International Education Week brighter and better. So that said, again, please get in touch. As Princess said, get in touch with your Education USA centers. You can get in touch with us on social media. We have excellent programs for you for free all week long. So thank you for celebrating IEW with us. Bye.